My mom gave 3 strangers her house key to rob my dad, then missed their 35th anniversary dinner to comfort her affair partner. When my dad cried, "Honey, I've loved you every single day for 35 years. How is that not enough?" She flinched, checked her phone, and said, "Jerry was helping me get better." I stayed silent. That was 1 year ago. This morning, she slipped her wedding ring back on and asked me if I'd help her remember how to quilt. My mom was this incredible psychiatric nurse for 20 years, always bringing home stories about helping people break through and find hope. Dad worshipped the ground she walked on, and honestly, they were that couple that made everyone else feel single, even after 35 years of marriage. Still held hands everywhere, still had their weekly date nights, still left each other little notes. So when Mom started talking about this patient Jerry, we didn't think anything of it. She'd mentioned him at Sunday dinners, saying he was brilliant but misunderstood, just a really great person who'd been dealt a terrible hand in life. Jerry was 30 with antisocial personality disorder and had been on Mom's unit. After he got discharged, she mentioned she'd dropped off some groceries for him since he had no family support. My sister, the family social worker, was the only one with enough balls to tell Mom that she was crossing professional boundaries, but Mom shot back that someone needed to believe in Jerry. Dad backed her up, of course, saying, "If it fulfills you, honey, then I support you." Classic dad, always choosing Mom's happiness. That's when stuff got weird. Mom admitted she'd lent Jerry money, just a few hundred for rent. Then she started lying about book club when she was really at Jerry's apartment. Our phone started ringing at all hours, and when Dad picked up, there'd just be breathing, then a hang up. The anniversary dinner was what broke my heart. 35 years together, and Mom missed it because Jerry was having a crisis. Dad waited at the restaurant for 2 hours like she might still show up. He came home to find $30,000 missing from their retirement account. We staged an intervention that went about as well as you'd expect. Mom sat there stone-faced while we begged her to see reason, but Jerry had completely poisoned her mind. She kept saying we didn't appreciate her sacrifices and that Jerry understood her in ways we never could. Dad finally broke down and said, "Honey, I've loved you every single day for 35 years. How is that not enough?" 2 days later, she was gone, packed everything while Dad was at work, and left a note saying she was moving in with Jerry to help him heal. Dad literally offered to let Jerry live in our garage if Mom would stay. She left anyway. I went no contact with her because watching my dad fall apart was culling me, and I hated her for it. He kept her coffee mug on the table and wouldn't let anyone touch her side of the closet. Exactly 1 year later, Mom texted me. Dad called me sobbing with relief, and we set up a dinner at Olive Garden because it was always Mom's favorite. When she showed up, Jerry dropped her off but stayed in the car watching. Mom looked like a stranger, skinny and jumpy, wearing these designer clothes that weren't her at all. She cried and apologized, saying she'd been in therapy, but when Dad reached for her hand, she literally flinched before forcing herself to let him hold it. The entire meal she kept checking her phone and staring out at Jerry in the parking lot. She mentioned he was her caregiver now because she'd been having memory issues. Dad immediately offered to take her to appointments, but she shut that down real quick. Jerry must have texted her 20 times during dinner, and finally he just walked into the restaurant. Mom jumped up so fast she knocked everything over and basically ran out saying, "I'll be in touch." 3 days later at 6 a.m., my phone rings. Mom's whispering and I can barely hear her. She's locked in a gas station bathroom and Jerry thinks she's buying cigarettes. Then she drops the bomb. She's not sick. Jerry has been drugging her to fake symptoms. He's been forcing her to reconnect with family and friends so his crew can rob them. Mom's co-workers got hit and one ended up hospitalized for fighting back. My aunt lost $50,000 in jewelry. Church friends cleaned out. My uncle was robbed last week. Then she tells me why she's really calling. They're coming for Dad tonight at 8. Jerry told his crew Dad has $100,000 cash from selling Grandpa's business, and if they don't find it, they'll hurt him until he tells them where it is. She's sobbing, saying he has videos of me. That's why I can't leave, but I couldn't let them hurt your father. I still love him. I've always loved him. She warned me not to call the police, saying they'd only warn him, but wouldn't stop him. Then I heard banging and Jerry yelling and the line went dead. I only had a few hours and couldn't call the cops. Instead, I called my sister and we rushed to Dad's house. He wouldn't believe it at first and kept saying she wouldn't do that to me. We begged him to pack up and leave, but he refused, asking, "What if she comes home?" By 7, we'd moved what valuables we could and set up cameras, but Dad was still in denial. Then at 7:30, Mom texted him a heart emoji saying thinking of you. Dad stared at his phone and said quietly, "She never uses emojis." 8 p.m. exactly, 3 men walked up our driveway. They had a key. I watched my father's face crumble as we heard what could only be Mom's key turn in the lock he'd installed himself 20 years ago. "She gave them our house key," he whispered. Then he stood up, walked to the hall closet, and pulled out his hunting rifle. I grabbed the rifle from Dad's hands before he could do something we'd all regret. My sister Victoria was already at the front door, sliding the deadbolt into place while the key kept turning uselessly in the lock. The men outside started pounding, and one of them yelled something about Jerry sending them for what was owed. Dad stumbled backward into the living room chair, his whole body shaking. Victoria rushed to the kitchen and started pushing the heavy oak table against the back door. I checked the rifle's chamber and found it loaded, then positioned myself where I could see both entrances. The pounding got louder. Through the peephole, Victoria counted 3 men, all wearing dark hoodies. One kept trying different keys while another walked around toward the backyard. My hands were sweating on the rifle stock as I heard glass breaking in Dad's study. Victoria grabbed the baseball bat from the hall closet and crept toward the study. I stayed put, watching Dad rock back and forth in his chair, muttering Mom's name over and over. The man at the front door gave up on the keys and started kicking. Each impact made the whole frame shake. A crash came from the study, followed by Victoria screaming. I ran down the hall to find her swinging the bat at a man halfway through the window. He ducked back outside, cursing and holding his shoulder. Victoria's hands were bleeding from pushing broken glass aside, but she kept the bat raised. The front door splintered. I sprinted back to see a boot disappearing as the man pulled his leg out. They were testing us, seeing how we'd react. Dad had finally snapped out of his daze and was barricading the door with the couch, tears streaming down his face. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered on speaker while keeping the rifle trained on the door. Jerry's voice filled the room, smooth and mocking. He said Mom wanted to say hi. There was shuffling, then Mom's voice, slurred and distant. She kept repeating that she was sorry, that she loved us, that Jerry was helping her get better. Jerry came back on, laughing. He said his boys were just getting started, that Dad had something that belonged to him, payment for taking care of Mom all this time. Dad shouted that he'd never sold Grandpa's business, that there was no money. Jerry just laughed harder and said we had 10 minutes to open the doors or things would get messy. Victoria had wrapped dish towels around her hands and was pulling Dad toward the basement. I followed, still clutching the rifle. We huddled in the corner by Dad's workbench while footsteps thundered overhead. They were inside now, ransacking everything. Dad kept whispering about the day he installed that lock, how Mom had picked it out at the hardware store, how she'd painted the door that soft yellow color she loved. Victoria held him tight while I aimed the rifle at the basement door, praying they wouldn't find us. Drawers crashed upstairs, furniture scraped across floors. One of them found Mom's jewelry box and whooped with excitement. Another yelled about checking the basement. My finger found the trigger as footsteps approached the door. It swung open. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness. I stood up, rifle raised, and told them to get out. The man froze, then slowly slowly backed away, calling for the others. They gathered at the top of the stairs, debating whether the jewelry was enough. Jerry called again. This time he put Mom on first. Her words came out jumbled, something about pills and videos and being so tired. Dad grabbed the phone from me, begging her to come home, promising to protect her. Jerry snatched it back and said Mom was exactly where she belonged. The men upstairs grew bolder. One started down the steps despite the rifle. I pumped around into the chamber, the sound echoing in the small space. He stopped, but didn't retreat. Said Jerry promised them more than some cheap jewelry. Said we were wasting their time. Victoria found Dad's emergency cash in his toolbox, about $3,000. She threw it up the stairs, bills scattering everywhere. The men scrambled to collect it, arguing over the split. One wanted to keep searching. Another said it wasn't worth getting shot. The third just wanted to leave. They compromised by destroying everything they could on their way out. Every picture frame, every dish, every memory carefully preserved in that house. Dad sobbed with each crash, each shatter. Victoria held him back when he tried to run upstairs to save Mom's china cabinet. 20 minutes later, silence. We crept upstairs to find devastation. Every room torn apart, every drawer emptied. Mom's wedding dress lay trampled in the hallway. Dad's bowling trophies were smashed. Victoria's childhood drawings were scattered like confetti, but they were gone. We were alive. Dad collapsed in the ruins of his living room, clutching a broken picture frame. It was their wedding photo. The glass cracked right through Mom's smiling face. He kept trying to piece it back together, his hands shaking too badly to fit the shards. Victoria called our cousin Nicholas, a security expert who'd offered to help before. Within an hour, he arrived with new locks, security cameras, and motion sensors. While he worked, I sat with Dad in the kitchen, the only room they hadn't completely destroyed. He talked about meeting Mom in college, how she'd tutored him in chemistry, how she'd worn this yellow sundress on their first date, how she'd held his hand through his father's funeral, his mother's cancer, every hard moment of their lives together. How could 40 years just disappear? Nicholas finished installing everything and showed us the camera feeds on his phone. He'd stay the night, he said, just in case. Victoria bandaged her hands properly and started sweeping up glass. I kept the rifle close, knowing this wasn't over. Around midnight, Mom called Dad's phone. Her voice was clearer now, urgent. She said Jerry was passed out hammered, that she'd poured out the pills he'd been giving her. Said she was scared, that the videos were getting worse, that Jerry's crew was angry about the small haul. Dad begged her to leave, to run to the police station just 3 blocks away, but she said Jerry had trackers on her phone, her car, even sewn into her jacket. Said he'd wake up if she tried to leave. Said he'd hurt everyone she loved if she disappeared again. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. Jerry wasn't done with us. He'd been planning this for months, studying our routines, our weaknesses. The robbery was just the beginning. He wanted to break Dad completely, take everything, leave nothing behind. Mom had to hang up. Jerry was stirring, but before she did, she whispered the address of a storage unit where Jerry kept his insurance, the videos, the substances he used, records of everyone he'd conned. Said the key was taped under his car. Then silence. I stared at the phone in my hand, processing what Mom had just revealed. A storage unit. Evidence. Maybe a way to end this nightmare. Victoria was already pulling up maps on her phone while Nicholas checked the security cameras he'd just installed. We need to move fast, Nicholas said, his military background showing through his calm demeanor. If Jerry wakes up and realizes your mom talked, he'll either move everything or come after us harder. Dad sat at the kitchen table, his face a mixture of hope and devastation. The storage unit could have proof of what he's done to her, he said quietly. Those videos she mentioned. Victoria finished wrapping fresh bandages around her palms. We can't all go. Someone needs to stay here with Dad in case they come back. Nicholas nodded, already thinking tactically. I'll go with you, he said to me. Victoria stays here with your father. We take photos of everything we find, then get out fast. Dad stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. I'm going too. This is about my wife. Dad, no, I said firmly. You're exactly where Jerry wants you. Emotional and not thinking straight. That's how people get hurt. His shoulders sagged, but he knew I was right. Victoria put her arm around him while Nicholas and I prepared to leave. I handed the rifle to Victoria, showing her the safety and how to hold it properly. If anyone shows up, you call us immediately, Nicholas instructed. Don't try to be heroes. Just get to the basement and wait for police. The drive to the storage facility took 20 minutes through empty streets. Nicholas had grabbed a toolbox from his truck, along with heavy-duty gloves and a flashlight. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I directed him using Mom's whispered directions. The facility was one of those 24-hour access places, surrounded by chain link and security lights that cast harsh shadows. We parked across the street, watching for any movement. After 10 minutes of nothing, we approached Jerry's hit-up sedan in the lot. Nicholas slid under the car with his flashlight while I kept watch. Got it, he whispered, emerging with a small key covered in duct tape. We made our way to Unit 47B, our footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. The lock clicked open. Nicholas pushed up the rolling door just enough for us to slip inside, then pulled it down behind us. The beam of his flashlight revealed boxes stacked along the walls, an old filing cabinet, and several plastic tubs. Start with the filing cabinet, Nicholas suggested, handing me gloves. I'll check these boxes. The first drawer contained financial records, bank statements showing large cash deposits, receipts for expensive items Mom would never buy. The second drawer made my stomach turn. Prescription bottles with different names, all for the same medications, sedatives, mood stabilizers, memory-affecting substances. Found something, Nicholas called softly. He held up a laptop and external hard drive. This could be the videos. We didn't have time to check everything there. I photographed every document, every med bottle, while Nicholas carefully packed the laptop and drives into his backpack. In the third drawer, I found notebooks in Jerry's handwriting, detailed plans about Mom, her family, her co-workers, pages of manipulation tactics, psychological pressure points he'd identified. My phone vibrated. Victoria texting. Someone's watching the house. Black car, 2 people inside. We need to go, I told Nicholas, shoving the notebooks into the backpack. As we prepared to leave, I noticed a small box in the corner, partially hidden under a tarp. Something made me check it. Inside were Mom's missing jewelry pieces. Her grandmother's ring, the necklace Dad gave her for their 25th anniversary, her father's watch. But underneath those were items I didn't recognize. Other people's treasures, other families' memories stolen. Nicholas grabbed the box. Evidence, he said simply. We slipped out of the unit, relocking it carefully. But as we reached the car, my phone rang. Victoria, panicked. They're trying to get in again. Different people this time. Dad's freaking out. We raced back. Nicholas calling a police contact on the way. I know your mom said no cops, he said, but this is escalating beyond what we can handle alone. By the time we arrived, the black car was gone, but the damage was done. Someone had spray-painted threats across the garage door. The new locks showed signs of tampering. Victoria met us at the door, still gripping the baseball bat. They didn't get in, she said quickly, but they wanted us to know they were here. Dad was pacing the living room, alternating between fury and despair. When he saw what we'd brought from the storage unit, he grabbed the jewelry box with shaking hands, pulling out Mom's wedding ring. She never took this off, he whispered. 40 years, and she never took it off until him. Nicholas set up the laptop on the kitchen table. We need to see what's on here before we hand it to police, he said. Need to know what we're dealing with. The external drive contained folders labeled with names. Mom's was there, along with dozens of others. Nicholas clicked clicked on Mom's folder, then quickly closed it when we saw the file types. We don't need to see these, he said quietly, but this is evidence of serious crimes. Other folders contained what looked like blackmail material on various people, financial records showing a pattern of theft and fraud going back years. Jerry wasn't just a troubled patient Mom had tried to help. He was a career criminal who'd identified her as an easy mark, compassionate, trusting, with access to vulnerable people through her work. Look at this, Victoria said, reading through one of the notebooks. He studied her for months before becoming her patient, knew about Dad, about us, about her need to help people. He played her perfectly. Dad slammed his fist on the table, and I let it happen. Supported her even when everyone could see something was wrong. He manipulated both of you, Nicholas said firmly. That's what predators do. They find good people and exploit their best qualities. My phone buzzed. Unknown number again. This time it was a text. You took something that doesn't belong to you. Bring it back or Mommy pays. Before I could respond, another text with a photo. Mom, clearly unconscious, with Jerry's hand visible in the frame. The timestamp showed it was taken just minutes ago. We can't give this back, Victoria said. It's evidence of everything he's done, but we can't let him hurt Mom, Dad said, his voice breaking. Nicholas was already on his phone with his police contact. We need units at Jerry's address now, he said, giving the location. Kidnapping, fraud, blackmail, we have evidence of all of it. But Jerry was smarter than that. Another text. Cops show up, she disappears forever. You have 1 hour, just you and Daddy. Bring everything. Dad stood up, suddenly calm. We're going. Dad, no, Victoria protested. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap, he said. But she's still my wife. I failed to protect her once. Not again. Nicholas thought for a moment. We can't send you in alone, but maybe we can control this. He pulled up building plans on his phone. Jerry's apartment complex. I can position myself here. Victoria here. You two go in the front, but we're your backup. And the evidence? I asked. We make copies of everything first, Nicholas said. Upload it all to a secure cloud. Even if he gets the physical items back, we still have proof. The next 40 minutes were a blur of preparation. Nicholas uploaded everything while Victoria gathered supplies. Pepper spray, a small knife, anything that might help. Dad sat quietly, holding Mom's wedding ring. I should have fought harder, he said to me. When she started pulling away, I should have done something. You loved her the only way you knew how, I told him. Jerry used that love against both of you. Nicholas finished the uploads and handed me a small device. GPS tracker. Hide it on you. If things go bad, we'll know where you are. The drive to Jerry's apartment felt like heading into battle. Dad sat beside me, clutching the backpack with the laptop and drives. Nicholas and Victoria followed in his truck, planning to approach from different angles. Jerry's building was a rundown complex on the edge of town. Broken security lights left large sections in darkness. We parked in visitor spots while Nicholas and Victoria melted into the shadows. You ready for this? I asked Dad. He gripped my hand. I've been ready since the day she left. We climbed to the 3rd floor, the backpack heavy on my shoulders. Apartment 3F had a dirty welcome mat and peeling paint. I knocked, my other hand on the pepper spray in my pocket. Jerry opened the door, his smile cold and satisfied. He looked exactly like his photos from the storage unit. Mid-30s, clean cut, the kind of face you'd trust if you didn't know better. Behind him, I could see Mom on the couch, her head lolling to one side. Come in, he said pleasantly, as if we were invited guests. She's been waiting for you. The apartment smelled like cigarettes and something medicinal. Mom's eyes fluttered open as we entered, trying to focus on us. No, she slurred. Told you. Run. Shut up, Jerry snapped, his pleasant mask slipping for a moment. You've caused enough trouble tonight. Dad moved toward her, but Jerry stepped between them. First things first, the backpack. I handed it over, watching him check the contents. His smile widened as he saw the laptop. Good, you follow directions. That's more than your mother could manage lately. We brought what you wanted, I said. Now let her go. Jerry laughed, setting the backpack aside. Let her go? She's exactly where she wants to be. Tell them, sweetheart. Mom tried to speak, but only managed a weak sob. The substances in her system were clearly stronger than usual. Dad's fists clenched at his sides. You've destroyed her, Dad said quietly. A good woman who only wanted to help you. Destroyed? Jerry's voice took on a lecturing tone. I've freed her. From her boring life, from you, from the thankless drudgery of caring for ungrateful patients. She's experienced more in 2 years with me than in 40 with you. He walked to a cabinet, pulling out a med bottle. Time for her evening medication. Helps with those memory problems she's been having. Those aren't real memory problems, I said. You've been drugging her. Jerry's eyes narrowed. Careful. Your guests here. Don't make me reconsider my hospitality. He grabbed Mom's chin, forcing pills into her mouth. She tried to resist, but he held her nose until she swallowed. Dad took a step forward, and I grabbed his arm, feeling him trembling with rage. There we go, Jerry crooned to Mom. That's better. Now let's discuss compensation for my troubles tonight. Compensation? I asked. My associates are very unhappy about their wasted evening, he explained. They took significant risks based on information that proved false. Someone needs to make that right. There is no money, Dad said. I never sold the business. It was all lies. Jerry studied him for a moment. I believe you, which is unfortunate, but there are other ways to settle debts. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. Your wife has been very helpful in identifying potential opportunities. Her coworker Margaret, for instance, recently inherited quite a sum. Or your brother-in-law with his classic car collection. You're insane, I said. I'm practical, Jerry corrected. Your mother created certain expectations. Those expectations must be met, one way or another. Mom made a sound from the couch, trying to form words. Number, more, she managed. Jerry's face darkened. I said shut up. He turned back to us. She's becoming more trouble than she's worth. The substances aren't working like they used to. She's building tolerance, fighting back. Maybe it's time for a change. The threat in his words was clear. Dad stepped forward again, and this time I didn't stop him. You want compensation? Dad said. Fine, I'll get you money. I'll sell the house, liquidate my retirement, whatever it takes. But you let her go. Tonight. Now. Jerry pretended to consider this. Tempting, but she knows too much. As do you now. He glanced at the backpack. Breaking into my storage unit was very foolish. That's breaking and entering theft. I could have you arrested. You're the criminal here, I said. Am I? A troubled man trying to help his girlfriend with her mental health issues? Storing some personal items while you broke into private property and stole from me? He smiled. The police would find that very interesting. Mom's eyes found mine, clearer for a moment. She mouthed a single word. Run. But we weren't running. Not anymore. I felt my phone vibrate. Nicholas checking in. I pressed the emergency button in my pocket, sending our signal. Here's what's going to happen, Jerry continued, enjoying his moment of control. You're going to help me access your mother's former patients. She kept such detailed notes about their vulnerabilities, their finances. Together, we'll make sure my associates are properly compensated. Never, Dad said. Jerry's smile faded. Then she stays with me. And accidents happen to confused, medicated women. Stairs are dangerous. Bathtubs are slippery. Such a shame when elderly people hurt themselves. That was it. Dad lunged at Jerry. 40 years of suppressed rage finally exploding. They crashed into the coffee table, sending pills and papers flying. I rushed to Mom, trying to help her sit up while the men fought. Jerry was younger and stronger, but Dad had desperation on his side. They rolled across the floor, Dad landing solid punches while Jerry tried to reach something under the couch cushion. Gene, Mom whispered urgently. He has. I saw Jerry's hand close on something metallic. Without thinking, I grabbed the nearest heavy object, a ceramic lamp, and brought it down on his arm. He howled, the weapon skittering across the floor. The apartment door burst open. Nicholas rushed in, followed by Victoria. Jerry tried to scramble for the gun, but Nicholas pinned him down with practiced efficiency. It's over, Nicholas said calmly. Police are already downstairs. Your crew members were picked up an hour ago. They're talking. Jerry's face cycled through emotions. Rage, disbelief, calculation. Then he started laughing. You think this ends it? She'll never testify against me. Will you, sweetheart? Not with what I have on you. Mom struggled to focus through the substances. Don't care anymore, she managed. Do what you want. I'm done. The police arrived then, filling the small apartment. EMTs checked Mom while officers took Jerry into custody. He kept talking, making threats, promising to destroy all of us, but his words had lost their power. Dad held Mom's hand as they prepared to transport her to the hospital. I'm here, he kept saying. I've got you. You're safe now. She squeezed back weakly, tears running down her face. Sorry, so sorry. No apologies, he said firmly. Just come back to me. As they wheeled her out, one of the detectives approached me. We'll need statements from all of you. The evidence from the storage unit is being processed. This is going to be a long night. I nodded, exhausted but relieved. Victoria had her arm around Dad, supporting him as he watched the ambulance leave. Nicholas was giving his account to another officer, his military bearing making him a credible witness. The detective looked around the apartment, taking in the scattered pills, the knocked over furniture, the general chaos. Looks like your mother was lucky to have family who didn't give up on her. She never gave up on us either, I said, remembering her desperate warning call, even when it could have cost her everything. The detective's words hung in the air as we watched the ambulance disappear into the night. Nicholas finished with his statement and joined us on the sidewalk. Victoria kept checking her phone, worried about the evidence we'd uploaded to the cloud. We should head back to the house, Nicholas suggested. The police will want to process Jerry's apartment, and we need to secure everything we found. Dad nodded absently, still staring down the street where the ambulance had gone. I guided him to my car while Victoria and Nicholas followed in his truck. The drive back felt surreal, passing through empty streets that seemed too quiet after everything that had happened. At the house, the destruction hit us all over again. Broken glass crunched under our feet as we navigated through the wreckage. Dad picked up a shattered picture frame from the floor, carefully extracting the photo of Mom at their 20th anniversary party. Nicholas started documenting everything with his phone, creating a record for insurance claims. Victoria found garbage bags and began collecting the worst of the debris. I helped Dad gather salvageable items, watching him handle each broken piece of their life together with trembling hands. Around 3 a.m., Dad's phone rang. The hospital. Mom was stable but heavily sedated. They were running tests to identify exactly what Jerry had been giving her. The nurse said we could visit in the morning once the substances cleared her system. Victoria made coffee while we waited for dawn. None of us could sleep. Dad sat at the kitchen table sorting through recovered photos, trying to smooth out creases and water damage. Nicholas reviewed the security footage from earlier, making sure we had clear evidence of the break-in attempts. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My heart raced until I read it. One of Jerry's crew members, picked up by police wanting to make a deal. He claimed Jerry had forced them into it, threatened their families, said he had information about other victims. Nicholas advised against responding. The police would handle any deals. But it made me think about how many lives Jerry had destroyed, how many families he'd torn apart using the same tactics. By 6 a.m., exhaustion was winning. Victoria convinced Dad to rest on the couch while she and Nicholas took turns keeping watch. I dozed fitfully in the recliner, jerking awake at every small sound. The doorbell rang at 7. We all tensed until we saw it was the detective from Jerry's apartment, accompanied by another officer. They needed our formal statements and wanted to review the evidence we'd found. The detective examined the notebooks, his expression growing darker with each page. Jerry's meticulous planning showed a pattern going back years, targeting vulnerable healthcare workers, exploiting their compassion, using them to access patient information and family connections. Your mother wasn't his first victim, the detective explained, but thanks to your quick thinking, she might be his last. They took copies of everything, leaving us with case numbers and contact information. Before leaving, the detective mentioned that Jerry's apartment had yielded more evidence: pills, documents, recordings. The case against him was solid. Dad insisted on going to the hospital despite barely sleeping. Victoria drove while Nicholas stayed behind to meet with a contractor about emergency repairs. The hospital corridors felt endless, fluorescent lights too bright after our long night. Mom's room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. She looked small in the hospital bed, IVs running into both arms. Her eyes opened when we entered, focusing slowly on our faces. Real this time? She whispered, her voice hoarse. Dad took her hand gently. Real, honey. You're safe. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she gripped his fingers. She tried to speak but started coughing. Victoria helped her sip water while I adjusted her pillows. The doctor arrived with test results. Jerry had been giving her a cocktail of medications, benzodiazepines, sleep aids, substances that affected memory and judgment. Combined with psychological manipulation, it had kept her compliant and confused. Recovery would take time, but the effects were reversible. Mom listened quietly, then looked at each of us. The things I did, the people he hurt because of me, because of him. Dad corrected firmly. Never because of you. She shook her head weakly. I gave him information about Margaret, about everyone. He made me write it all down when the substances made me confused. Victoria squeezed her shoulder. You were a victim, Mom. Everyone understands that. But Mom's guilt was palpable. She turned to me, eyes pleading. Can you ever forgive me? I chose him. I left. I let him use my key. I moved closer, taking her other hand. You didn't choose anything. He targeted you, studied you, broke you down. That's what predators do. We stayed until the nurse insisted Mom needed rest. Dad promised to return later, kissing her forehead before we left. In the elevator, he seemed lighter somehow, as if seeing her awake had lifted a weight he'd carried for 2 years. Back home, Nicholas had worked miracles. A cleaning crew was hauling away debris while contractors measured for new windows. He'd even arranged for a locksmith to install high-security deadbolts on all doors. The insurance adjuster arrived that afternoon, surveying the damage with practiced efficiency. Between the break-in and vandalism, the claim would be substantial. Dad barely paid attention, focused on news from the hospital. Victoria fielded calls from family members who'd heard about Jerry's arrest. Each conversation revealed more victims: cousins, family friends, Mom's former colleagues. The scope of his operation was staggering, all built on exploiting one compassionate woman's trust. That evening, the detective called with updates. Jerry's crew had all been arrested, each trying to minimize their involvement. Jerry himself had demanded a lawyer, but the evidence was overwhelming. Multiple victims were coming forward. He'll likely face decades in prison, the detective said. Fraud, kidnapping, assault, substance charges, the list keeps growing. Dad hung up looking satisfied but exhausted. We ordered pizza, none of us having energy to cook. Sitting in the damaged living room, eating off paper plates, felt strangely normal after the chaos. Nicholas had to leave for a security consultation but promised to check in tomorrow. Victoria started making lists, things to replace, people to notify, appointments to schedule. Always the organizer, even in crisis. I found myself standing in Mom's old craft room, relatively untouched by the destruction. Her quilting supplies Papers sat neatly organized, projects half finished. A reminder of who she'd been before Jerry, who she might be again. Dad appeared in the doorway. She loved this room, he said softly. Spent hours here, making blankets for the church nursery. She can again, I said. When she's ready, he nodded, fingering a piece of fabric. I kept everything exactly how she left it. Thought maybe, if she came back. She did come back, Dad. Just took longer than we hoped. The next days blurred together. Hospital visits where Mom grew stronger and more lucid. Police interviews providing additional details. Insurance paperwork and contractor meetings. Slowly, the house began resembling home again. Mom's recovery wasn't linear. Good days where she seemed like herself alternated with bad ones where guilt and shame overwhelmed her. The hospital's psychiatric team worked with her, addressing both the trauma and the effects of prolonged substance exposure. Other victims reached out, some angry, others understanding. Margaret, Mom's coworker who'd lost her inheritance, visited the hospital. Their conversation was private, but Mom seemed lighter afterward, as if forgiveness from someone she'd inadvertently hurt mattered more than our reassurances. Jerry's lawyer tried various tactics, claiming diminished capacity, blaming his personality disorder, even suggesting Mom had been a willing participant. Each attempt fell apart against the mountain of evidence and victim testimony. A week after the break-in, Mom was discharged. Dad had prepared everything, her favorite foods, fresh flowers, her reading glasses right where she'd left them. She stood in the doorway, taking in the repairs and changes. It looks different, she said quietly. Some things had to change, Dad replied, but the important stuff is still here. She walked through each room slowly, touching familiar objects, noting what was missing. In their bedroom, she found her jewelry box, the items we'd recovered from Jerry's storage unit carefully arranged inside. You found these? She held up her grandmother's ring with shaking hands, along with everything else he took, I confirmed. It's all evidence, but the police made copies and returned the originals. She slipped on her wedding ring, tears flowing freely. Dad pulled her close, and for the first time in 2 years, she didn't flinch from his touch. The adjustment wasn't easy. Mom jumped at unexpected sounds, checked locks obsessively, panicked when anyone knocked on the door. Years of hypervigilance under Jerry's control had left deep marks. Victoria research therapist specializing in trauma and coercive control. Mom resisted at first, shame making her reluctant to share her story again, but eventually, she agreed to try. I returned to my own life gradually, though I called daily and visited often. The crisis had pulled our family together in unexpected ways. Even Victoria and I, who'd always butted heads, found new understanding in our shared determination to help our parents heal. 3 weeks after Jerry's arrest, we attended his preliminary hearing. Mom testified via video link, too anxious to face him in person. Her voice shook as she detailed the manipulation, the substances, the threats, but she got through it. Jerry watched with cold eyes, occasionally whispering to his lawyer. When the judge denied bail, citing flight risk and danger to victims, Jerry's mask finally cracked. He screamed threats until court officers dragged him away. Outside the courthouse, other victims thanked Mom for her courage. Each story shared similarities: Jerry's calculated approach, the gradual isolation, the escalating control. Together, they painted a picture of a serial predator who'd operated for years. The prosecutor felt confident about conviction. With multiple victims, physical evidence, and Jerry's own meticulous records, the case was solid. It would take months to reach trial, but justice seemed certain. Back home, life settled into new rhythms. Mom attended therapy twice weekly, sometimes with Dad, sometimes alone. She started helping with simple tasks, cooking familiar meals, tending her small garden, organizing closets. The craft room remained untouched until one afternoon when I found her standing in the doorway. Would you help me? She asked. Together, we sorted through projects, discarding some, salvaging others. When she picked up her quilting needles, her hands remembered the motions. Dad watched from the hallway, eyes bright with unshed tears. These small returns to normalcy meant everything after months of uncertainty. Nicholas had become an unofficial family member, stopping by regularly to check security and share meals. His eye need to steady presence helped everyone feel safer. He and Victoria grew closer, bonding over their protective instincts. One evening, while helping Mom prepare dinner, she suddenly stopped chopping vegetables. I need to tell you something, she said, about the videos Jerry had. I set down my knife, giving her full attention. They weren't what he said they were, she continued. He drugged me, posed me, made it look compromising. But the police tech expert said they could tell they were staged. The substances in my system, the timing, everything proved I wasn't conscious. Relief flooded through me. One less weapon Jerry could wield, one less source of shame for Mom to carry. He counted on my fear, my embarrassment, she said. Made me believe everyone would judge me, that no one would believe the truth. But we did believe, I reminded her. Dad never doubted you were a victim. She smiled sadly. I know, that's what saved me, knowing you all still loved me despite everything. Dinner that night felt almost normal. Mom laughed at one of Dad's terrible jokes. Victoria shared stories from work. Nicholas complimented Mom's pot roast. Simple moments that would have seemed mundane before now felt precious. The house repairs were nearly complete. New windows, reinforced doors, security system humming quietly in the background. Physical reminders of trauma slowly replaced by signs of renewal. Mom still had difficult days. Nightmares woke her. Certain sounds or smells triggered panic, but she faced each challenge with growing strength, supported by family and professionals who understood trauma's long reach. Jerry's final victim count reached 17. Each had lost money, dignity, peace of mind. Some, like Mom, had lost years of their lives, but his arrest had broken his hold, allowed healing to begin. I thought about the night this started, sitting with Dad's rifle, watching strangers use Mom's key, how helpless we'd felt, how certain Jerry's control seemed. Now, he sat in a cell while his victims reclaimed their lives. The rifle was locked away now, Dad having no need for it. The cameras Nicholas installed rarely showed anything more threatening than delivery drivers. Our home felt safe again, even if complete peace remained elusive. Mom began reaching out to other victims, offering support and understanding. Her psychiatric nursing background, once exploited by Jerry, now helped others navigate their trauma. Dad supported this cautiously, worried about her taking on too much too soon. I need to do something positive, she explained. Turn this horrible experience into something that might help someone else. It was quintessentially Mom, finding purpose in pain, offering compassion despite her own struggles. Jerry had tried to corrupt that quality, but he'd failed to destroy it. 6 months later, at Jerry's sentencing, Mom stood before the court. No video link this time. She read her victim impact statement clearly, detailing not just what she'd lost, but what she'd found. The strength of family, the power of truth, the possibility of healing. Jerry received 47 years. Not enough for the pain he'd caused, but enough to ensure he couldn't hurt anyone else. As officers led him away, he looked older, smaller, ordinary. Just a manipulative man who'd run out of victims to exploit. Outside the courthouse, Mom hugged each of us tightly. It's over, she whispered. Really over. Dad kissed her forehead. No, honey, it's just beginning.